So I have here a Polycom SoundStation Premiere conference phone, and Polycom still makes conference phones. Obviously, you'll find these in meeting rooms all over the country, but today they're predominantly IP conference phones, and this is an analog conference phone. So obviously before IP phones, Polycom was making analog conference phones, and so that's what we've got here today. And I've actually got a couple conference phones, slightly different models, but here we have a Polycom SoundStation 2, and here we have a Polycom SoundStation EX. And again, these are all analog conference phones. So here are some of the connectors for these phones, which are quite interesting if you haven't seen them before. So these are the wall modules. First thing you'll notice is that these are 110 volts. So these are pretty hefty. And these are slightly different. This one here is actually the same type of power adapter as the one for the phone that I have plugged in. So I'll take a look at that one. This one is actually a little bit higher. It's 115 volts. And they both have ringer equivalence number of 1, I believe. This one doesn't actually say, but this one does. And I'm going to stop holding this because this is a very sticky cable. Now, what's interesting about these, and I can show you that here, is you'll see that there are two wires that are coming out of the power module for the conference phone. So the thicker wire is basically this here. And just looking at this looks like your standard Ethernet cable. It's an 8-conductor twisted pair cable. But this is actually what plugs into the phone. And this is the only thing that plugs into the phone, in fact. So this is delivering both the voice signal from the phone line as well as the power from the power module. So you might say, well, where is the phone line in that case? The phone line is the thinner wire that connects to the same module, and that breaks out into a phone, this small phone cable here that you would then actually go ahead and plug into the wall. And that's somewhere here in this rat's nest of wires, the other end of it at least. Yeah, somewhere here. And so yeah, that's what the interface is like. It's a little bit interesting, but it actually makes sense if you think about it, because you would have these on a conference table, presumably, and so it makes a lot of sense to just have one cable coming out of the phone going to this unit, and then you can have your connections made from there as needed. But that leads to less of a mess on the table, and you can do your cable management a little bit better that way. So anyway, so these are similar units. The one I actually have connected for this demo here is the SoundStation Premiere, and let me prop this up right there. So that is actually where it's plugged in right now. So you can see it's a similar type of unit. The same one as one of those other cables, in fact. Now, I don't actually have the other end plugged in here. I'll plug it in a second. And then I've got this phone cable kind of precariously running along and plugged into a phone line there. So the phone line is active. So here is the other end of the cable that would plug into the phone here. So let's go ahead and do that now. Unfortunately, like many Ethernet cables over time, the connector that snaps in has broken off here. So I'm going to do my best to hope that this stays in here, but that might be a little bit tricky. But here is where it would actually plug in. Again, it looks like an Ethernet port, RJ45 connector, but it's carrying voice and power. It's kind of like power over Ethernet in a way, in terms of what it actually accomplishes. So there's the bong you hear when it powers up. And there we go. Now it says Premiere for SoundStation Premiere. So this is its idle state here. And it's ready for use. So, yeah, we can go ahead and go off hook. It's got a very simple keypad. You can tell it's an analog conference phone. There's two dead giveaways for it if you didn't know. One is the flash button, and two is the pulse tone toggle. You wouldn't have either of those on an IP phone, obviously. So anyways, if we go off hook here, we get dial tone, and I'll go ahead and call myself here. Hello? Testing. Alright, so it works. That's test one. And yeah, I'm talking to myself. It's hard to test both at once, but I'm going to cover up the mic here and try to pick up my voice through the conference phone in the room. And it works. I mean, it works great. We've got the mute button here. We can use that. Lights turn red when you do that. And now you only hear me coming through here because I'm getting picked up on the phone here. But if I cover up the mic as best I can, then you don't hear me anymore through the conference phone until I uncover that again. And as soon as I unmute, then of course I can also hear myself coming back through the room when I cover the mic up again. So you probably can't hear any of that, but I can tell that it's working as intended. A couple other interesting things here. I mentioned the pulse tone toggle. So right now it's on tone mode. Alright. What we can do is if you hold down the shift key and press this button. Let me try that again. Alright, so now we're in pulse dialing mode. You can hear pulse dialing. We can change back to tone. And what's very nice about this, I'm going to set this phone down just so I don't have to hear myself coming back here. What's nice about these phones is that you can actually toggle between pulse and tone while you are off hook. Not all telephones with a pulse tone toggle will let you do that. In fact, I have an ITT 2500 type phone, or actually, sorry, it's a Conair phone, not ITT, that has a toggle like that. And I don't believe it lets you toggle it while you're off hook. You can toggle it while you're off hook, but it won't actually take effect until you go on hook and then back off hook. I believe the AT&T 100 works the same way, if I remember correctly. But this will take effect immediately, so that's very nice. You got your volume control here. I actually turned this down earlier. It gets way louder than that, way louder than you'd ever want it to get. Now to demonstrate, I can make a three-way call here, of course. It gets loud. Alright, I've conferenced it. And I'm going to kick that because that is just super obnoxious now. And there we go. So that is basically all the functionality for the keypad. Now, the other thing I can try here is I'm going to hang up that phone, and I'll disconnect it here. Alright, so we've gone back off hook, or sorry, on hook, and I can call this phone from another phone, so let me do that. Alright, so let me dial this phone. There we go. And it says no caller info because I don't have caller ID provision on probably most of my lines, actually. Let me go ahead and answer this. Alright. Hello. So that was an incoming call. And ringer is decently loud. I think this is actually on the softer setting. So, it's not bad at all. So yeah, that was just a brief look at the analog conference phones that Polycom has made. I do have two others here. I'm not going to plug them in for this demo just because they're very similar. Some of the buttons are slightly different. But I mean, you've got your mute, volume control, stuff like that. This one does have a slightly fancier display. And then this here is actually essentially the same thing, minus the pulse tone toggle, which you don't have here. So this is the oldest unit. I think this is the newest unit, and this is sort of in the middle here. So it does make a nice conference phone if you have the use case for it, or you could just use it as a speakerphone. It works pretty well for that. You could also just use it as a speaker if you wanted to listen to stuff by telephone. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about this. But these are definitely some nice conference phones that I'll be keeping around. So.